In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a browser-based phone. We're going to be using WebRTC technology that's going to connect to Asterisk 13 over the WebSocket connection. Now we're using Asterisk 13 because it's got support for Opus codec on ARM-based CPUs, and our Raspberry Pi is ARM-based. From there, I'm going to show you how to download the source code from GitHub and have a hosted site inside Asterisk. So it'll have the WebRTC connection and the static pages. Those pages provide all the functionality for your phone. And it's that phone that allows you to make and receive calls between each other. I'm going to demonstrate how you can make a call between two parties. You can even transfer a call, you can have a conference call. You can even establish a video call. Video calling can be recorded just like the audio call, and inside your video call you can present a sketchpad or another video. That video then is played through to the receiving side. All those features and more, including text sending and buddy management, is all part of the phone. So if you're interested to see how you can make your own WebRTC phone, stick around. Hey guys, thanks once again for joining me. My name is Conrad de Vet, and this is Innovate Asterisk. So we've got a lot to get through today, but if you do follow me step by step with your own Raspberry Pi, you will have a working browser phone solution. So first of all, let's go and flash our Raspberry Pi SD card with a Raspbian OS. I'm going to use the Raspberry Pi imager that you can get off the raspberrypi.org website. So I'm going to choose the operating system, and I'm choosing Other, and then I'm choosing Raspbian Lite. That's the one I want. It's got no graphic user interface. So I then choose, this is my SD card, and click Write. I'll have to put my username and password in here. Right, now that it's done, click Continue. It will eject the disk from the computer. So I'm just going to take out the SD card and put it back in, because I need to do one more thing. In a terminal on a Mac or just with Notepad on Windows, I need to write an SSH file to this disk. Sudo nano, and then I'm going to write to volumes boot SSH. I'm going to enter my password because I am on root. I'm just going to press Ctrl O to output it to the disk. It's now written. Exit that. So now I'm going to eject the disk and take the disk out and put it in my Raspberry Pi. I'm now going to boot up my Raspberry Pi and access my Raspberry Pi via the network. So a Raspberry Pi is available on its MDNS address at raspberrypi.local. So if I want to access, log into this Raspberry Pi, I'm going to type in SSH, and then I'm going to type in pi at raspberrypi.local. Now the key is already added to this computer, so I need to fix that up. So I'm going to do that now quickly. Right, I can now access my Raspberry Pi. The password for the Raspberry Pi by default is Raspberry. Okay, I've now logged into my Raspberry Pi, and I need to do a couple of things before I do anything on this Raspberry Pi, and that is to elevate my privileges to super user. So I type sudo su. I'm now in as root. You can see there, root at Raspberry Pi. And now I'm going to do apt get and then just run an update. Now an update will go and re-download all the links to all the binary files that it may need to download in order to do updates and things like that. So let's just leave that to complete its update. Okay, it didn't take long. Now I need to install a couple of things which I'm going to use down the line. I'm going to install Samba so that I can access this Raspberry Pi like a regular computer on the network. I'm going to install NTP, which is a sort of a time server, which just keeps the clock up to date. And I'm going to install Git so that we can get the source code for our browser phone project down. So apt get install Samba, NTP, and Git. Those are the files. Yes. At this point, we're going to say no. Now that we've installed these things, we're going to just test one or two things. So first of all, date should be correct. Okay, Friday, May 15, so that's fine. Now we're going to set up Samba quickly so that we can access this Raspberry Pi remotely from the network like a regular file server. So I'm going to add the Pi username, and it wants that Pi password. So Raspberry, and it's now added. Now I'm going to type nano, etc. samba smb.conf. All right, so that's the Samba config file. I'm going to go right down to the bottom, and I'm just going to drop in this template for a share folder. This will give me effectively root access to the Raspberry Pi in any file folder. So Control O to write it, confirm, X to exit. Now I'm going to restart the Samba service. So I'm going to type, paste it in there, service SMBD restart. It's now restarted. I should be able to access this Raspberry Pi over a network. So I'm going to go on a Mac, I'm going to go connect to server. On Windows, you will just use your Windows networking in order to access this server. So there's smb raspberry pi.local. So I'm just going to connect to that. You'll also remember that when I connect now, I'm connecting as Pi. Password is Raspberry. It's going to then offer you Innovate Asterisk as the share folder, and that's the one you want. So I now have access to this computer, to this Raspberry Pi over the network. Okay, like I would have any other computer. So let's put that aside for the moment. We're going to carry on with our installation. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use OpenSSL to install the certificates. Now if you don't remember how to do this, or if I'm going too quickly, you can always go through the other video that I've done on secure calling on Asterisk, where I go through in much more detail how to create the certificates that we need. Remember though, the important thing is we've got to create a certificate authority. Once we've created a certificate authority, we take that certificate and we deploy it on all of the computers that we are going to use to access our Raspberry Pi. Because remember, the certificate authority creates the sub-certificates, the server certificates that we install onto the Raspberry Pi, onto the web service. So in other words, when those pages are served to you as a browser, only the CA can authorize that certificate. And in order for it to authorize that certificate, we need to download it, install it, and put it in our own CA computer CA folder. All right, so I know I've gone through that pretty quickly. Just follow the steps or go through the secure calling video and you will see in more detail. So in order to do this, let's first exit ourselves from super user. We don't actually need to do any of this under the super user account. So I'm going to now make some directories. I'm going to make a directory called CA, and then I'm going to make one called certs, and then I'm going to make one for CSR, certificate signing requests. Okay, so these are my three folders. As you can imagine, the certificate authority is going to be there in the CA folder. My actual server certificates are going to be there, but in order to make a server certificate, I need a certificate signing request, and then I use the output will be put into the certs folder. So let's use OpenSSL first to create ourselves a root CA key. Now this is by far the most important file in all of this. Okay, it's the key file which you use to generate a server certificate, and this is all you do. So there you go. Right, I've now need to give it a password. The key files, remember, need passwords. So I'm going to type a password and confirm. All right, I've now typed a password and retyped a password, and I've created a key file. Now I'm going to create my certificate authority. Okay, so this is going to produce a cert file from my key file, right? And in order to use my key file, at any point I need the password. I think I've typed it incorrectly. Right, that's better. Now it's going to ask me for various pieces of information. So I can say GB, some state. So the thing is, it's going to ask you for information about the authority, that is you as a company, right? Or an authority. And I'm just going to say some state. This is really just sample stuff. None. At this point, I'm going to say innovate asterisk, something like www.innovateasterisk.com. That'll do. Okay, so for your fully qualified domain name, which is not really going to be a domain name, I'm going to call this the innovate asterisk root CA. Okay, that's sort of what I'm labeling it as. Email, well, conradjdw@gmail.com. Okay, so I've now created a CA key, right, which is password protected. From that CA key, I generated a certificate authority certificate, a CA cert, right? Now, the next job is to create a certificate that I'm going to use on this server. So we are now generating a server certificate. In order to do that, I need to create a signing request, certificate signing request. But in order to do that, and it's a sort of a two-shot deal, I create a CA cert, right? That's this one here, and a private key, right? But this private key does not necessarily need a password, all right? So in order to create my certificate signing request, we do something similar to the certificate authority. So we also say things something like GB, some state. Now this is, remember, this is going to be used on the server. So this is going to be the certificate that is presented with the web request. So you want to be essentially more accurate at this point. So I can say, well, again, just because it's a test situation, I'm going to say some state. So I'm going to say something like some city, whatever. Organizational unit, I'm going to say is my Raspberry Pi, it's where it's being located. It's actually on the Raspberry Pi. The unit name, I'm going to say HQ, headquarters. Now, for the fully qualified domain name, in this case, now I do want to have it correctly written because it is going to be providing secure sites off this URL, and that is raspberrypi.local. This is the domain. This is a server address, fully qualified domain name of this computer that is serving these pages. So raspberry.pi.local is the correct term to use here. Email address, I'm going to leave that empty. And I'm also going to say my challenge password is nothing. These are the optional extras which I'm not going to use at the moment. So I have now created for myself a certificate signing request, a CSR, that's this file over there, okay? And with it comes the key, but essentially I need the certificate signing request. So now I'm going to effectively pass that certificate signing request, well, essentially to myself to sign it, because I'm going to create a machine certificate. But in order to do that, and because we are making version 3 certificates, I need to create a quick file. So in this file, I'm going to drop in just this bit of information, right? It's just what we need and includes the DNS with alternate names for the certificate. So Control O for output, Enter, X to exit. Okay, and now I'm going to use all of those pieces of information and generate a certificate. Right, so let's have a look. I've got my certificate signing request, which I have all that information which I entered, like for example location, URLs and things like that over there. My CA, my certificate authority. Okay, I've got my root CA key. So by the fact that we have a root CA key there, you'll see that we'll need to put in a password. And then I've got my output, which is my destination file. So that's what it's going to generate for me and takes in the version 3 configuration. So I press enter. Now it's going to ask me for that password. I got it right this time. And there you go. It's done. So let's have a look at what we did. So I'm going to go back to my file system, and in home pi, I've got my CA, my certificate authority. I've got my certs, which is my cert file and key, and a certificate signing request and the signing request version 3 file. This file is my actual certificate for this server. That file is my certificate authority. I need my root CA certificate. So I'm going to, at the moment, take it and drop it onto my desktop. So this is quite an important step here. By me taking the CA certificate, my root CA certificate, I'm for the moment putting it on my desktop, but I'm actually going to install this file onto this computer. I'll do that in a minute. And that will give this computer trust, right? It will literally say you can trust certificates signed by yourself, by this certificate. And this certificate here, this Raspberry Pi cert, is the certificate that we signed with it, right? As you saw in that last command. So by using that to create this certificate, we're going to have a trust certificate. So let's put that away and continue. Now there's a couple of other things that Asterisk requires, and that is a PEM file. So PEM is just a cat, which is sort of like a mush together of the two files. So I can just press enter over there. And then there is one more thing which we do need to make sure of. It was typically OpenSSL will write your keys as unaccessible, right? Because they, generally speaking, are the kind of things you want to keep private. But Asterisk itself requires the key. So we need to set its properties with the chmod over there. So now that we have set everything up correctly for our certificates, we're going to go and install Asterisk 13. Right, to install Asterisk 13 and Opus, I'm going to install a couple of dependencies. So let me quickly go and create and install two dependencies that I need. And they are lib opus dev and lib opus file. I'm going to need to be in as root, so let me just do this. I've now installed those two things. And now I'm going to download the Asterisk 13 current. So you'll see here it goes to asterisk 13 dash current. So that just gets the current, most up-to-date asterisk 13 branch. Now that it's downloaded, I'm going to, now we use tar xvf asterisk 13 current, and that you will see has now expanded to asterisk 13.33. So that's the version of asterisk we are on. So cd asterisk 1333. Okay, so now I'm going to start installing. So I want to make sure I am in as root for the next few things. So let me go to sudo su. All right, I'm in the same location just as root, and I'm going to now issue this install script. So remember from my other video on installing Asterisk from source in more detail. So at this point, we're just going to take out any preceding values and type 44. Right, we've installed everything at this point, so we can go on to configure. And the configure script is as follows. So we type ./configure. We're setting our library directory, and we're saying with PJ project bundled. We do require that for various things. Great, that is what you want to see. Fantastic. So now that we have done the configuration, we're going to go to a tool called Make Menu Select. So let's go in there. Inside Make Menu Select, what we're basically going to do is just switch on and off various things that we need. So we're going to leave most of it the same. We're just going to alter one or two things, and so that it's a little bit better set up. Right, so under this menu, we're going to leave the application, we're going to leave the bridging, the call detail records. We're not using any call detail records, so I'm switching those all off. And the channel event logging, we're also going to switch that all off. Okay, the channel drivers, you'll see here is SIP. All right, so that's what we're going to use. We're going to also, you'll see there's PJSIP and SIP. Now, you might find this unusual, but I'm going to show you this to you in SIP, in chan SIP, which is something which they have got under the extended menu. The more default is PJSIP, but for the moment, SIP is a bit more simple to understand, so I'll take through with you in normal chan SIP. Codec translation, please don't enable the Opus codec over here. Remember, that will download the x86 version of the Opus codec, which is useless in our case. There are the format translators, we leave those. Dial plan, we'll leave that. The PBX modules, we will leave most of that. Let me have a look. Yep, that's fine. Resource modules are fine. Test is all off anyway. You know, I really do like to put better backtracks in it. Voicemail is on file storage. Utilities, we don't need these. And AGI, we're not going to use any AGI at the moment. Remember, the default should be on WAV and GSM taken off over there. So music on hold file, this is fine. The extra packages we're going to leave. Okay, save and exit. Now that we have set up Asterisk, we're going to now call the make. Great, now that you're here, as it suggests, we need to type make install. Excellent, so now it is installed, but we do need to add one more thing. We need to configure Asterisk so that it starts up automatically. In order to do that, we type make config. Okay, very simple, and that's it. Now, the way the Asterisk is configured with the path set to user lib64 means that we need to make one more change to a config file in order to get Asterisk to know where that location is. So I type in echo user lib64. Now I can issue an ld config, and then I can test that my asterisk binary file loads correctly with all the linked files. So there everything works correctly. Okay, let's exit this. That exits us from the root. Now I'm going to issue a service asterisk. All right, loaded but not started. So start and back to status. There you go, running. And now I can also log into Asterisk. So I can say sudo asterisk -r. If I hit tab, you'll see that none of my modules are loaded. Right, so let's recap for a second. We've installed our certificates and we've downloaded that CA file to our computer. We've then installed Asterisk from source, set up all the configurations of it. It starts automatically like it should. Except when we log into Asterisk, you'll notice that none of the modules are loaded. Essentially, this is because our config files are not there. The config file directory is completely empty. So this is the point where I'm going to get you to go to the GitHub website, go and download the Git file, and then you will have everything that you need in order to get Asterisk set up as a basic config. All right. There is no bells and whistles. There's no dial plan. It is just a basic configuration. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. All right. So I need you to head over to the following web page. So we go to Innovate Asterisk on GitHub and Browser Phone. So under Browser Phone, you will see here is the project file with all the screenshots and everything like that and features. This will get updated from time to time, so be sure to get the latest copy. Clone or download, this is the URL we want over there. So we copied that to our clipboard. Right, we're now done with that. Put that to the side. And go back here. I'm exiting from Asterisk. I'm back here at my Raspberry Pi login, and I want to go to my root directory, so home pi. Now I'm going to say git clone and paste that file that is copied, right? It's now cloning that file. Okay, and now I can go ls-l, and I'll have my browser phone folder over there. So the browser phone folder has got all the config files and things in it. Okay, as per what is on the website over here, you can see it's got phone, screenshots, config, and some modules over there. That's the Opus codec for Asterisk 13. So I'm going to now copy some files over. I do need to do this with sudo. So I'm going to say sudo cp, copy from my config directory to my asterisk config directory. The asterisk config directory, of course, is empty at the moment. So I've done that. Now I can issue a service restart to asterisk. So I can say, that's a couple of lines up, service asterisk restart. Okay, and let's go into asterisk. So where is it? There. And now hit tab, and there you go. A whole lot of things are now in place. So now I have my sip, PJSIP, and various different things over there. Right, now the first thing we're going to do is get a WebSocket connection to Asterisk established. And in order to do that, we use something called the HTTP config. Now, it serves as two purposes. The first is to provide a WebSocket connection for our project into Asterisk. But because it itself is in fact a small web hosting solution, we're actually going to host the files in that solution as well. So we're both going to get the web serving and the WebSocket serving from the same thing. Okay, I'm going to now exit Asterisk. Now we're out of Asterisk, and I'm going to now go to my file server because I'm going to fiddle with the config files. I'm going to go back to the etc. asterisk. Right, these are the config files that GitHub downloaded for us, right? And now I'm going to open Visual Studio Code. There's Visual Studio Code. Pop that in there. Right. And we close the intro and say I need sip. Remember, as I said, we are going to be using sip.conf for this project. You could use PJSIP if you are familiar with it. The principles will be the same. I'm going to need extensions.conf. Where's extensions.conf? That's our dial plan. Remember this from the previous video. sip.conf, extensions.conf. And I'm also going to need modules because I need to do one thing. So at the moment, I'm going to be setting up HTTP. So there you go. So I've now got HTTP conf. I've got sip.conf, extensions and modules. So these are the files that I'm going to be dealing with at the moment. Inside the http.conf, I want to do the following things. So I'm going to take all of that out and I'm going to say that. First of all, I'm saying over HTTP, it's disabled. It's not worth doing anything over HTTP anymore. Over TLS, which is essentially HTTPS, I'm enabling it. I'm binding it to any IP address on port 4443. Now I can run this off 443 if I really want. Okay, it doesn't really matter because Asterisk is running as root at the moment. So I can change that to 443, which is under the 1024 restriction for privileges. However, well, let's just leave it like that. So I'm going to save it. Now I've got my Raspberry Pi cert, which was, remember, we built earlier on, home Pi certs, and I've got my key. I've got enable static. Those settings over there will be fine for WebSockets. However, enable static, I'll show you that in a second, hosts a small folder which we can put our source files in. So there's a session limit of 1,000 as well. This is not a great web server by any means. It is really a very simple environment. And if you were doing this in any form of production server or anything like that, you would use something else, maybe a Node.js server or something like a Apache server or something like that. And then the redirect is like this because essentially even in static, which is what this enable static hosts for you, that doesn't have a default file. So this is kind of like just establishing a default file, so which is index.html. So right, I've got my HTTP file there. Let's go back to Asterisk. Okay, and at the moment I'm going to issue a Asterisk restart. So now that I've restarted Asterisk, I want to check to see if my web server is running. So I'm going to run the following command: sudo netstats -tulpn. Don't mind what that is, but effectively, there you go. There's Asterisk running on TCP port any IP 443. So what that means is that I can access that page. There you go. I can access that page over HTTPS. So let's give that a test. Now there's a convenient test page for you. So I'm going to just grab that and pop that in here. Right. Okay. Who understands what's going on here? You see it says there invalid certificate, error invalid certificate. If you click it, it actually tells you. It says Raspberry Pi local innovate asterisk root CA. Hold on, there you go. Innovate asterisk root CA. That sounds familiar. We made one. Right. So this certificate file is the certificate that we used to generate these certificates over here. So I need to install it on my computer. In other words, I need to tell my computer that you must trust this certificate. Here we go. I double click it on a Mac, so typing in the password. Okay. Now, this is the equivalent of the Windows Certificate Manager or whatever it is. This is keychain access, but effectively you will install the certificate, and here it is over here. So here under Innovate Asterisk root CA, I'm going to double click it and choose trust, always trust. Right, always trust tells me that I must trust the certificate. Again, it's going to want me to type in my password. Okay, now it's trusting me. Can you see here? The certificate is marked as trusted for all users. I've physically installed the certificate. So I can quit keychain access. And over here, I can refresh the page. There you go, working. So now if I show you by going to inspect, you will see that under security, let's move that out the way, I have a secure page. The certificate is valid and trusted. The connection is over TLS 1.3, and I can view certificate if I really want to. There's the details. This is the details of effectively what we generated. Do you see that there is the root CA? So that's the certificate authority that we created, some state none, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and then I signed with a certificate signing request. This one, right? Some state, some city, Raspberry Pi, HQ. Remember the differences? Okay, so that there is this hierarchy over here as illustrated by these icons. The root CA, which is installed on this computer, initially created this Raspberry Pi.local certificate, and the Raspberry Pi.local certificate got served with this page. So in order for us to know to trust it, we have to have the certificate inside our computer, and that creates a secure connection. Right, so this connection is secure. Now, as I said, inside Asterisk, if I go back here and type, let's go back to Asterisk, I type HTTP show status, I can see that I have /WebSockets, which is my WebSocket connection, and I have /static, right? So static is static delivery. Essentially, this HTTP status is the one that I was just looking at over there. So that's this one, okay? And the static page is the page that I'm going to populate with my GitHub code. So let's go and populate that. So let's go and have a look at that folder. So the static that Asterisk refers to, this /static, is hosting pages in this directory, var/lib * static HTTP. So if I go there and type ls-l, I will see some demo stuff in here. Now I don't need any of these things, so I'm going to delete them all. So I'm going to type sudo rm star, and then I'm going to say sudo copy home pi browser phone star, all the files, to var/lib * static HTTP. Okay, and then I'm going to need to change modify their permissions. So chmod 744 to all the files. So let's go ls-l, right? There they all are. rwxr, so these are the permissions, root, and there's all the files. Asterisk is running as root, so my files are as root as well. Okay, and by putting these files in here, we will now be able to access the root directory of this, and in turn it will forward my request because of the / redirect to static HTML, and there you go. So now I have accessed my browser phone basic HTML interface. So let's understand this. It is the HTML pages that render the web application. From this web application, we're now going to connect back to Asterisk on that / WebSocket path. As you can see, in fact, it's already showing here under the settings. Right, now I'm going to need to allow microphone and camera access. So I'm going to click allow. Okay, so under the account settings, it's going to want to need to type in some settings here. Well, I certainly know that my address is going to be raspberrypi.local. My port is 443. Remember, that is the standard HTTP port. My path, because of that setting here, is / WebSockets. Right? So I can leave that, WebSockets. Now, this information, I know my name, so I can say Conrad Vet. Subscribe extension, SIP username, SIP password. I don't have any. Okay, so let's go and make some. I'm going to put that to the side, and I'm going to bring back my Visual Studio Code. So we were previously working in my http.conf. Everything in here is working correctly. So I'm going to close this. Now I need to make some extensions. I need to create some credentials for me to log into. Okay, and I'm going to do that in sip.conf. Only problem is that at the moment, PJSIP and ChanSIP are running. And I would like to demonstrate this application in ChanSIP. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to disable PJSIP for the moment. And I do that by preventing the load. So I'm going to say PJSIP. All right. I'm going to say under modules, auto load ECS, but no load PJSIP. Right. So saving that, and I'm going to go back to my console, and I'm going to say sudo, where will it be, up, let's type it out again, sudo service asterisk restart. Okay, by doing this, I have now disabled PJSIP because I'm going to use ChanSIP. ChanSIP uses sip.conf, right? So I'm actually done with modules, right? And now I can add credentials to here. So the first thing I'm going to do when I set up extensions for myself is I'm going to create something called a template. So I'm going to create a basic template. Now this is something which has previously not been covered, but basically it's a context block like this, which has got the square brackets across it, and then a bracket, normal bracket with an exclamation mark inside it. All right. It just indicates to the system that basic is in fact a template. And the reason for us needing a template is that we don't have to copy and paste so much stuff. All right, so I'm going to put inside my basic template some basic features of essentially all the extensions that we have. A type friend, qualify yes, context from extensions, host is dynamic, direct media no, NAT is force rport and co-media, and the DTMF mode is set. Disallow all codecs, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do later to allow them, and I'm going to say video support is yes. All right, might as well. Then I'm going to create another template, and well, there's two other templates because we've got two other types. So I'm going to say phones is a template, and this is typical desk phones. They're using transport UDP with the following codecs. And then I'm going to say WebRTC, which is the second template, and then WebSockets is the transport, and the allowed codecs are as follows. You will see that the Opus codec is first, then ULAW, and then the video codecs over there. And I'm going to show you how we install Opus in a second. Right, so encryption is yes. All these settings have to be in place for us to create a WebRTC connection. So now that I've created my template, okay, I need to create some users. And the way we use our templates is as follows. So I'm going to create 3 users, right? I say user 1, but in brackets over here, I don't use exclamation anymore. I use the actual name of the template, which is basic over there. All right. So I have basic WebRTC, basic WebRTC. So these are 2 users, and they only contain the following pieces of information, which is caller ID and secret. So it's, in other words, it's who are you and what are your credentials. The rest can be taken from templates. Okay, this is the typical way we would do things. Now you could have hundreds of those. These are the different extensions. User 3, user 2, user 1. Right. Now something about usernames, caller IDs, and secrets, which I want to be clear about. Now, telephone systems like Asterisk and most of them almost always work on a sort of username and password handle, right? And that's fine, except I find the username a little bit of a security concern. If I were to tell somebody, hey, give me a ring at user1 at some IP address, I'm actually giving away one piece of security information, which I don't really want to be doing. Okay, I would much rather tell people to ring me on a specific extension number. That is this number over here. This is effectively my DID. The technical name for it is DID, direct inward, inbound, or inward dialing. Okay, it's my telephone number, and we are more than familiar with telephone numbers. Everybody has one on their cell phone. It's not like you tell people to ring you on your mobile at John Smith at AT&T, right? You don't do that. You dial somebody on their telephone number. And much the same way with Asterisk, I try to keep to the same concept. I don't like dialing people on their usernames, right? This user 1 is a secret piece of information, and the secret that goes with it is, of course, the credentials. Now, we do need to know what our username and password is, but public piece of information that we give to everybody is 100, 200, 300. Those are the numbers that you use to dial me. You don't ever really dial me at user 2, user 3. It's a silly concept, and I don't believe in it, right? I always believe that you must have DIDs for people. That is how you get hold of people. Now, I will show you how to map DIDs to usernames, because if I try and dial 100, there is no such extension as 100. It's just a made up number. This 100 could be 123. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It doesn't matter, okay? And the fact that it doesn't matter actually is more important, because this can change easily, but the username is very difficult to change, right? It's something which I'd have to go and physically change on my phone or in my web browser. However, 100 is something which could be arbitrarily changed at any time, okay? You can reach me on extension 100 today, on extension 200 tomorrow. It doesn't matter, right? But please understand that username, that's this field over here, is a piece of a credential which I wouldn't give out to anybody, right? And that goes hand in hand with my secret or my password, right? But the public information that I give out is essentially my caller ID, which is in the form of a name and a number. I'm Conrad de Wet, extension 100. I'm also user 2, 200, and user 3 at 300, whatever the case may be. All right, so I'm going to now save that. Now, in order to apply these settings, remember, we do have to go back to our terminal, and because we changed Actually, we don't need to be outside of Asterisk anymore. So I'm going to go into Asterisk and I can say sip reload. Now that I've done sip reload, I can say sip show peers. Right, there you go. I now have 3 peers. Make that a bit bigger. I now have 3 peers. And I'm ready to put that information into my browser phone. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to type in here, SIP username was user1, remember? Password 1234. Now again, don't misquote me here. Password 1234 is not a secure password, right? Make something more complicated, right? Make it random letters and numbers. Make it 16 characters long. You're never going to give that out to anybody else, right? And once you typed it in, it saves it. So it really doesn't matter how complex that password is. Same for username. If you don't like the simplicity of user1, make it a complex username. Again, you're not going to give it out to anybody else. But this is quite important. You can put your DID in here, right? The DID is useful for the system to tell other users if you're online or not, right? If your phone is registered or in use. And I'll show you how to subscribe to that kind of thing now. So now that that information is on, I'm going to click over into audio and video. Now at the moment, you'll see it's picking up my voice from the microphone over here. And I can change which microphone it's using by selecting over there. You'll see that I've got various microphones and things like that. And the same with speakers, all right? I can make it go out through one speaker or the other. And if I click the play button,
Move the sheet to the dark blue background.
I can say internal speaker
to tell the depth of the well.
4 hours of steady work faced us.
So this is
the canoe slid on the smooth plank.
This is the one I want. Okay. Auto gain control and echo cancellation, noise suppression, they're on by default and that's fine. All right. I can also choose my webcam. All right. There you go. As I'm talking, it is now showing the video footage, and I can change some of these settings, but bear something in mind. If I try and over constrain these video hints, they may cause the preview not to work well. I can try putting it on to such a small video size, but some webcams don't really work so well. And as you can see, this one is really starting to slow down. My voice and this video is really quite out of sync. So hit the little bin icon over there and you should see that it should restore it to its default settings. By clicking the bin, it just says don't do anything. The only thing I do like to do really is put the aspect ratio constraint in, because it does look a bit nicer on 16:9. Okay, so I've got that in there. I've got my webcam, I've got my microphone set. Appearance, well, let's pop in a picture. So let's choose a file. There you go, me a couple of years ago. And again, I want to set notifications on, so I'm going to say yes to that. All right, I have my account, I have my video and audio set up, I have my appearance, and have my notifications. I can now click save. But in order to apply these settings, I do need to reload the page. It'll do that for you. So there you go. As soon as you click OK, right, you'll see it says there WebSocket error. So what's happening here is, if I click on it and go OK, it's working and WebSockets are possible, right? It's saying upgrade required, which is essentially fine. So let's go and have a look at my CLI. Okay, it's been going crazy. It's saying could not accept no protocols out of SIP support. So this is a very cryptic clue, which is sort of given out, but basically what it's saying is that your sip.conf is not set for WebSockets. So do you see it says here WebSockets enabled? I'm going to set this to yes, right? There's one other thing that I want to do in here, and let's see here it says max call bit rate. Now, max call bit rate of 1 megabit per second is a little on the shy side, especially if we are going to be using video. So I'm going to set it to 512. All right. Now I'm saving that. Okay. And I'm leaving that as it was. I then need to go and sip reload again. So sip reload. There you go. Let's put that back there. And all by itself, user 1 registered. So let's go and have a look. Here you go. 100, Conrad de Vet, registered. Okay, so that is a very important thing to understand. Now, the way that this phone interface works is you always have to have essentially a buddy, right? A buddy or a contact or somebody else to talk to. The way phones always work is you always can speak to somebody. It doesn't really have just an arbitrary dial pad that you can just punch in any number, because it works really around the principle that if you can do that, just make a buddy, right? So I'm going to make somebody to call, and my person I want to call is user 2. Okay, test user 2. User 2, test user 2, and remember his DID was 200, right? So that's all I need, 200 user 2, and I add it. All right, now you'll see it comes up as unknown, right? So what's going on here? Now the next section we're going to do is to set up something called BLF or hints. Now hints and BLFs are essentially this little icon which is gray at the moment, which gives me the status of his extension. So I need to know if this person is online or not. At the moment it's unknown. Now Asterisk can tell you that information, and it tells you that information through something called a hint. So let's go and configure our hints. In order to do a hint, we need to establish something called a subscribe context. For example, underneath context, I'm going to say subscribe context is subscriptions. Now this context, like this context from extensions, refers to this over here, right? From extensions refers to that. So whenever any of these devices that are basic devices, which are these ones here, whenever they pick up the phone and dial somebody, right, they then march off to this point in the dial plan. Right? But we don't have a subscriptions context, so we must go and make one, right? The subscribe context is basically where in the dial plan the system is going to look out for subscription status information. So I'm making a subscriptions context, right? And they use something called hints. So the way you construct it is as follows. I say extend 100 hint sip/user1. So remember I said to you that there was this sort of mapping between DID and username. Well, this is where it comes into play. So I'm saying that if I want to find the status of a user 100, for example, show me the sip status as sip user 1. 200 sip user 2, 300 sip user 3. Right, so that is what I'm going to put in there as my hints. Right, let's go back now to our dial plan, and I need to do a sip reload, and I need to do a dial plan reload. Right, I have two things that I need reloaded because I worked on the dial plan and SIP. I said my subscribe context is subscriptions, and there is my subscriptions context. Okay, so let's go and have a look at what effect that had on my browser. So I'm just going to refresh this. Now it says not online. That's fantastic. Okay, so let's go and create another login with a different browser. So what I'm going to do now is launch a different browser because obviously I can't use the same browser. I'm going to use a different browser. This is Microsoft Edge, and I'm going to go to the same URL, but with a different browser. Now, the settings are stored per browser, right, and per URL session. So within Chrome, I couldn't run it twice, but with different browsers, I can run this whole thing twice on the same computer. Okay, so I've allowed the microphone and camera, and then I'm going to type in here Raspberry Pi.local, and I'm going to say 443 WebSockets. This is 200, and it's user 2, full name, user 2, and the username was user2 and the password 1234. Okay, so video, I wanted to use a different set of this one.
Move the sheet to the dark blue
Not the same microphones, let's use that one.
Tell the depth of the well.
And I have 2 webcams, so I wanted to use the other one. There you go. Okay, so I'm using a different webcam so that they see different things. I'm using a different microphone and a different speaker. Appearance, have I got somebody for that? This person does not exist, and create a user 2. Perfect. Save image as. Hold on, just drag that to the desktop and then drag it back on there. Boom. Notifications, might as well allow, save. All right, reload, not saving that. All right, so I have now user 2 and user 1. Okay, so I'm registered. Can you see there? Ready, awesome. And I need to add somebody, so let's add Conrad Devet, and I can say innovate asterisk. Oops, let's do that. His extension 100. Okay, I don't need anything else there. Add. There you go, ready. So 2 ready users. So 200, 100, that's essentially this profile, and that's this profile. Okay, now I'm going to split these next to each other in a minute, but I do need to explain one more thing, because we don't have anything to dial at the moment. If we try and dial, we will get an error by way of our dial plan. Well, not an error, it'll just hang up. Okay, anything I dial from extensions says no op, hello world, and hang up. Right, so a good sort of start. Okay, so let's put in something a bit more useful into our dial plan. So I'm going to do something called a feature code. So let me do a music on hold feature code. So how it's going to work is whenever from extensions is initiated, if somebody dials the number *65, right, I'm going to call something called a macro with a macro name called music on hold. So what is macro and music on hold? So a macro is like a small application which you write. So in order for me to write this application, I'll go down here and I'll type macro dash music on hold. So the macro part is required because that's what you are writing. You're writing a macro. So you type macro dash. And the music on hold part is essentially the one you want to call. So by saying macro in brackets music on hold, I'm going to essentially execute this, right? It's literally execute this macro. Okay, and there's some nice things about macros and there's some not so nice things about them. The one not so nice thing about a macro is it cannot be called within itself more than 7 times, otherwise it will consider it a loop, and they aren't memory efficient. Okay, but they're kind of convenient in that they execute and return and they carry on, and they do a lot of that kind of thing themselves. There's something called a sub or go sub, and they're a little bit more stronger, better on the memory side, and they can be called infinite many times. But in our test case, in our simple solution, we're just going to make it a user macro and for simplicity. Okay, so I'm going to then put in the content of my macro, which is to say no up, music on hold, so just print out onto the screen. Then I'm going to say ringing. Now what ringing does is it tells the device which called this macro that, hang on, I'm ringing. And then I wait for 2 seconds, which is essentially 2 seconds of ring time. I then fully answer the call, and wait another 1 second. This is just a sort of like a pause really, and then I play music on hold. The reason is if you call answer and music on hold too quickly, they can essentially my answer may not be 100% complete. I might not even have had my act back from my answer, and the music on hold will already be playing. It's just a habit that you always put in a little bit of a wait time, and so that's how that is structured. So now that I've called my macro, I'm going to save that. Now you'll see that it says *65 and this pattern over here. So the thing about the way dial plans work, and this part before the first comma, is that the most accurate match will execute first, and it needs to have 1 on it, right? Can you see that also says 1? But basically it's saying that if this pattern is matched, all right, then execute this macro, okay? And then if anything else is dialed, then run this code. So I'm going to just write something a bit more explanatory there, and I'm going to say anything else, hang up. So that same code, 1, no op, you called, and then it's going to substitute with whatever you dialed as, just prints it on the screen. So this extend here is basically extend. It's the value that you typed over here. So if I type 300, the parameter of extend will be populated with 300, and what you will type out on your screen will be it'll say you call 300 and hang up, and it'll give you the hang up course code 1, which is not found. Okay, in other words, the person or thing that you were dialing was not found. So anything else, hang up. So feature codes are there, anything else, hang up. So let's go and use our feature code to make a test call. But remember, I've been working in my dial plan, so I'm going to say dial plan reload. Oops, reload. Okay, so I've reloaded my dial plan. The SIP settings I haven't changed, so I'm going to leave those as is. Most of the work we're going to do now is going to be inside the dial plan. Okay, so I've reloaded my dial plan. Sorry, that might have been out of screen. So I'll just show you there. Dial plan, reload. Go to Chrome. Now click add. I'm going to say, let me just say *65 test music on hold. Okay, and I'm going to say testing some music on hold. It doesn't have a subscribe extension. It's not an email, but it is a contact number, right? So *65 contact number 1 is what you enter in there, and there it writes it over here. It says *65 test music on hold, and that little testing some music on hold, and the number it will dial when you click it will be *65, right? So that's how that works. And this is also the default interface. If I click this button over here, I can close that chat interface over here. Essentially, this is the message stream. And if I click on this one, I can switch to them or close. All right, so that's how it works. And if I search, I can say *65, and that'll bring up whatever I want. So add, search, and click. That's the way it works. All right, so *65, test music on hold, and I'm now going to dial. So let's just see what happens. 2 seconds of ring, call in progress. So there's no audio coming out of the system. And let's go and have a look on the dial plan to see what happens. Now it's quite important that you see the errors because this is sort of a way for you to understand should you come across the same thing. It's trying to play music on hold. So let's have a look at what happens. It said macro music on hold. Music on hold is that where was it? That's that no op that we had. Okay, ring, wait, answer. So everything did correctly except music on hold played a sort of like empty sound. So there's music on hold. Now it started to complain about this signed linear and opus. Opus codec. So the problem here is that we don't actually have opus codec installed. It knows about opus codec, but it's not actually installed in the on this server. So I'm going to exit that, and I'm going to then copy, paste. So I'm going to copy home, Pi, browser phone, modules, *13, opus, ARM, SO, to user lib64, modules. Remember, that's the location of my * modules, right? It'll install the opus codec into Asterisk. So we have to actually restart. So sudo service asterisk restart. Okay, and let's go back. Now I can say core show translation, and you'll see there opus codec is installed. Right, now that should work a bit better. So let's go back here and do another test call. 2 seconds of ringing. Music. Okay, so here is the calling interface with music playing. You'll see your microphone levels going up and down over here. The sound coming back from the far side is displaying over here. Right, device settings. This allows you to change your microphone and speaker and even a camera during a call. And then the call stats is essentially an output of your send kilobits per second, which will be the opus codec send kilobits per second. You can see it's sending at about 32 kilobits per second at about 50 packets per second. It's receiving a little bit less because they'll probably be unwrapped, 10 kilobits per second, so it's pretty nice and low. Also 50 packets per second. We're getting no packet loss across the network, and we've got no jitter. And the actual audio levels that are coming in terms of receiving across the line are being plotted out over here. You can see it's a pretty reasonable level, 40, and this is where it's coming in at. So that's nice and audible. And I can close that. So we have our usual things. We have a dial pad with DTMF buttons. You can say sending to your DTMF. I can mute myself. Okay, I'm on mute now, but remember this is a test call to music on hold. So essentially the receiving side would hear me as muted now. Okay, I can record this call. So calling is now, call recording is now started. I can forward this call, transfer this call. So if I put this onto transfer, effectively what happens is I start the hold, all right? Or if I take it off, then I'm off hold. So this is hold, normal hold. So the other person would be hearing music on hold now. And this is a transfer. I start transfer, also puts it on hold. So I can take it off as well. I can actually unhold it while I've got my transfer window open there, or continue to hold it over there and then close it again. So these are toggle windows. I can also conference a call now. So if I don't actually want to transfer a call, I actually want to conference somebody in, then I can do the same thing. All right. So with music on hold, I can't actually use any of the transfer features because it's not a bridged call, but this is how you would access these two settings over here, as you know, hold as well. All right. So that's the end of that. When I hang it up, it automatically creates me a CDR, as you can see, and I can. Okay, it's a bit weird hearing yourself. Okay, so these are CDRs. Every time I create a call, okay, even if I cancel it, it says that I tried a call and I didn't get through. And essentially, this is my call CDR and call recording store. Right, so everything that I have done with this contact, whether this was somebody within your organization or somebody outside of your organization, would all be stored in this CDR over there. Okay, so that is essentially the personal version of a call detail record and a version of a call recording storage. And the other thing you can do as well is you can flag a call. So you can, for example, click here and you can flag it, and you can see it's just for better sort of visibility. You can also tag a call. So you can say test, and you can say music on hold, and you can say YouTube. Now, the reason why you can tag a call is because of the search facility. So if I say tag : and then I say test, then it'll come up as one of the options. Even if I go test 1, 2, 3, it contains the tag. So if I say test, or if I say MOH or U, it all comes up. All right. The other thing you can do is you can comment on a call. So you can say this was the test call to music on hold. Right, press enter, it saves it. So when you go away and come back, you can see it's still there, right? It saved all that extra data, extra metadata in your stream. That's this field over here. Right, so there is the different conversations or streams that you're having with the various different people. You can, of course, delete it, which then removes this person from your list, and easy enough just to add them again. Deleting them is a good way to kind of like clear a lot of history and things like that. There's a future improvement idea to, instead of delete completely, is just to trim a sort of an amount or a period of time away. So some further details are accessible over here, and you can see just more information about them and a bigger picture. So if I want to go here and change this icon and say, let's put a nice picture on there, test music on hold. So there's a music icon. You say save. I know that there's a little bit of an update bug where this updates and that one doesn't. No big deal, just refresh it, and there you go. All right, so we have now an icon on our users. So user 2, remember user 2 was this guy. So let's update his thing and choose user 2. Okay, now you see it says they're offline. Okay, and that's because when we restarted Asterisk, it didn't I didn't refresh the registration, but there you go. Now it's up. Okay, so I have a test user and I have a buddy who I can call. So if I click call, right, not found, right? Remember it says there, not found. Okay, so what happened is it said you call 200, hang up. Okay, which means that it said anything other than *65, no op, you called. So what we did was we put in feature codes, but we didn't put any calling between each other. So the way to do that is quite simple. I'm going to do extensions, and I'm going to say when somebody dials 100, execute this macro called dial extension, and it will be, don't do it like that. I'm just going to make some changes here. User 100, user 2, user 1, user 2, user 3. Okay, so I'm dialing macro, dial extension, user 1, user 2, and user 3. So I need to make this macro dial extension, right? So I have the last part, and I need macro dash. That's how you make a macro. So what do we put in this macro? There, pretty simple, calling arg1. Right, what is arg1? Right, so what happens is when you call a macro which has got a comma at the end, do you see this macro here? It said macro music on hold, and it was just music on hold without anything further, nothing, no comma at the end, right? If it's got a comma at the end, like these, right, then it means that arg1 is the first argument afterwards. arg2 would be the second one, and arg3 and 4 and etc. Right? But arg1, which is the only argument that we are sending, is this username, which is our actual username. So essentially, by calling this line of extension 100 macro, dial extension user 1, it calls this macro, says I'm calling user 1, right? Or whatever user it is. I'm going to call the dial command. Now dial requires you to give it a technology prefix, right, in front of it. The prefix basically gives you the technology that you're going to be using. If it's SIP, then it's using ChanSIP. If it's PJSIP, then it's using PJSIP, right? But the arg2 is the actual person that I want to dial. To dial user 1, I type sip/user1, but using this macro passes that field as a parameter, right? So there, if somebody dials 100, user 1 gets dialed by using sip/user1. And this next parameter is just a required parameter. It's asking for the timeout. So after 30 seconds, it's going to time out. When it times out, there's a timeout event that's raised, and you can handle it, like for example go to voicemail, but we're not going to look at that at the moment. So I'm going to save that. Right, let's dial plan reload. So go back here, it's not that, dial plan reload. Okay, now this should start kicking into gear. Ringing. Okay, I'm going to cancel it for now because I just want to show you what's happening on the dial plan. Okay, so it said when it entered that dial plan 200 from extensions. Remember, that is the starting point of the from extensions context. It said macro, here, macro dial extension user 2. Remember? It then went over to macro dial extension at line 1, and it said calling user 2, which is what was passed over. And so basically user 2 was rung. Now it's doing all the notification things and things like that, and it's saying that it's sending notifications. So we can sort of see that. Let's put those two together like that. So if I dial user 2, you'll see that immediately the phone gets to ringing. Okay, even this one on the phone, it's marked as on the phone, and this is us here, and you can see that at the moment it's actually just giving me this red indicator, and it's saying you've got an incoming call, and I can answer the call. Okay, so I'm going to get echo, so don't worry about that, because it's on the same computer. All right, so the reason why I'm getting echoes is it's on the same computer, but essentially we've now established a call between two parties. Okay, so next I'm going to show you what happens when you try to make a video call. So remember earlier on I adjusted my call bit rate to 5120, and I also have this video support is yes, right? In order to have true video support, I need to have some of the video codecs. At the moment, VP9, VP8, and H.264 are the ones which I can use. Now, all video is always in pass-through, right? It doesn't ever get transcoded by the system. Even if one extension has ULAW and another extension has Opus, the system can transcode between those two codecs. But you have to have matching codecs in order to have a video call. H.264 must be H.264 on the receiving side. So that is quite important. So let's test a video call. In order to do a video call, I need to change my layout a bit so that I can show you my full screen. You'll see that. It's not going to be as clear. I do realize this. I'm recording in 720p. Right, but I have two users in front of me. I have, actually for simplicity, because of the way my screen is arranged, I have my one webcam on one side and my other webcam on the other side. So I'm going to now call with a video call between the two. You see it now says answer with video. Now it's going to start screaming because they're on the same computer, and the microphones are going to start picking up each other. So I'm going to mute it straight away. So there you go. Muting that one. Don't worry about the mutedness because it's just going to create a feedback loop. But essentially, there is one webcam over here, and there is another webcam over there. All right. Let's, for example, start recording it. Where can I record it? Here. Okay, I'm now recording this video conversation. Okay, now I'm going to show you a few things which you can do with a video call. First of all, there is a different screen layout, and that's this one like that, which does a more full screen view of it. Kind of useful if you want to sort of sit back and see something more clearly. Then I can also change the presentation. So I want to be able to present something called a sketchpad, right? And over here, I can present something, an idea, whatever it is, to the other person, right? So you'll see that as I'm sketching, all right, these sketch lines here will come through on the video. I'm not very good at making a Christmas tree, so don't worry about that. But essentially, if you were being presented to, that's the kind of idea. I can also share my screen. So it gives me an option to share my screen over here. Okay. And well, this is going to be very funny, but essentially that's this user over here, and sharing my screen, right, in turn, which is being presented to this person. So as the viewer and the receiver of this call, I'm seeing the video like that, all right? And essentially I can just restore it over there. Then the other thing I can do is I can show somebody a video. So I can choose a file over here, okay? And on my desktop in samples, I can show something like this, okay? So what you're seeing is a video being presented here, which is being transmitted over to this user over here, and this person is just enjoying watching the video, right? The sound actually is coming through. What you're hearing is the sound coming through on this person's computer, okay? Because this is muted, okay? And this is also muted here. Otherwise, you would hear it both. You would hear it here and there. You can unmute it if you want, and then you can hear both, right? But for the moment, I'm doing it like that. So I can share a file. All right, and each time you share a file, it will resample it to a suitable size. So if I, for example, do a 1080p video, right, then it's resampling the video from here to there when it transmits it over to here to 720p. You can see the little bit of delay in the rendering. Okay, so anything that you send will be sent over. Let's just cancel that. because we are recording on this side, I'm going to send myself one of the videos so you can see that it comes through in the recording as well. So Big Bucks Bunny, there you go. All right, enough of that. Okay, so I've given you some examples. We've got presenting of a camera, you've got a presenting of a sketchpad, a screen, a file, and of course nothing. Present blank just blanks out the other person's screen on that side, so they don't see anything. And then of course a camera, and it returns it. Okay, now you can put a call on hold, that is possible, okay, and plays music on hold, and the video stops. You can see it's stopped over there, right? Not moving. And you can resume it, and it will resume the stream. It's a little bit similar to putting blank on, except with the music on hold option, then it sends music on hold. Okay, so that's it. That's what the call is. I'm going to end the call now, and you'll see pretty much straight away it creates a call recording for me. Not here, because this person didn't record the call, but this person recorded a call. And so let's go close up and bring that in a bit. There is my video. Yeah, now you're not hearing anything because of course it is in fact muted. Remember, the first thing we did was mute the video. Okay. But you can see it's a full preview of what happened. The other thing to remember is that its recording style is set to show this view of yourself in the top left window there. So what you were presenting, remember on the left hand side, I was presenting the sketch to the other person. Right? So whatever the other person's reaction to that is what is being recorded here. Their feedback to you. Remember, the screen on the right was this view and the screen on the left was the sketch view. So you get a very small icon of what it is that you were presenting to the other person. Okay? And you'll also remember that down the line. Now I can't scrub because it is streaming, but there you go again. I was presenting my desktop, and again, it's recording it small. Now, there are various styles of recording. You can record side by side, and you can record where you are in the top left and they are full, or you can record where you are full and they are in the top left, or, of course, only you and only them. So 5 different recording styles, okay? Again, with this, you can make it bigger, or when it's finished, you can download it. The other one is to use picture-in-picture, which is just a default of HTML5 HTML. There you go. There's the video. Okay, enough of that. We're done. I know what you've all been thinking is, yes, but what about this little text chat button over there? So let's go and enable text chat. In order to send simple text messages to each other, you have to make a small change to your sip.conf file. Okay, that's your sip.conf here. You need to say accept out of call messages, yes. And you to say that you need to auth messages. No, you don't need to auth them. And out of call messages that you do accept and you don't auth must go to the following text message handler. Now, we don't have auth on because we are presuming that this environment, our PBX environment, is within a secure environment. In other words, that we don't have arbitrary access from the outside to this box, which is sort of a little bit like saying that we trust our box, that if somebody is sending us a text message, it's pretty much going to be destined for somebody. Now, as in all the other contexts, like the sip context, the subscribe context, and the message context, this text messages is a context which we have to establish inside our extensions.conf. So under here, I'm going to say text messages, right? Now, how are we going to handle text messages? Well, we need mappings, remember? DID mappings. So if I put this mapping down here again, 100, one macro send text, user one, you're starting to see a pattern here, 100 dial extension, and then hint 100 hint. Okay, so all of these are forming much of the same sort of format. So this case, I need a macro called send text, and I'm going to go and make one, and I'm going to say macro dash send text, right? So what's inside the send text macro? Now, what we're effectively trying to do is we're trying to take the send text message to somebody, right? And we're trying to send the message. You see it says there send, right? Sip colon arg1. So remember arg1 was the first argument inside the bracket here, user one. So sending the sip message to arg1 is pretty simple, right? Because you already know who you're sending it to. And send message is pretty straightforward. Okay, there are 3 variables which are established in this context over here. So as the message comes in and goes into this context, 3 variables are established. One is message from, the other one is message to, and the third one is message body. Now, message body is required to be populated in order to use the send message. Now, it's already populated because of the context that was fired over here. So message body is already taken care of. The to and the from, which are these 2 arguments, have to be populated. Now the to is again easy, sip colon and the person you want to send it to. Now this sip colon is a technology determination. It can say XMPP and it can say PJSIP, right? Because each one will actually use the technology that it's needed. So sip colon means chan sip, which means send the message down the chan sip channel, which is what we're using. We're using chan sip. The to is, of course, the username that we are registered as. Okay, in the case of 200, right, my actual username behind this DID is user2, which of course nobody needs to know, and that's the whole point of all this. So the only complex part, and don't worry about the complexity of this is just very annoying that you can't do this in a more elegant manner, is I've got to take message from, which is actually formatted something like, I don't have an example, but it will look something like this, Conrad, and it will say user one at Raspberry Pi, Raspberry Pi local. It'll look something like that. So message from will be your SIP username message from, because remember, SIP doesn't actually understand what a DID is at all, right? That DID mapping is something we do and we control. According to the SIP messaging protocol, it doesn't understand that, right? So it knows you only as user 2. So user 1, user 2, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and then it's got a caller ID. So what all this cut message does is from the start, it cuts on the @ sign, right? So let's separate those out. Cuts it on the and it takes the, do you see the number 1 here? It's referring to the first to the part on the left. It's 1 based. So I take that. At first, it cuts it to that, right? And passes the result into the next cut, all right, which is cutting on the crocodile brackets, whatever it's called. So it splits these things over here, and this time it takes the part on the right. So C2, this is 1, that's 2. So it splits it over there, and you're left with that. Then it takes that result and splits it on the semicolon, colon, and again takes the part on the right. So then as I did earlier on, like that, throws away that part and keeps that part. So we're left with essentially a clean username, which I have said is your peer, which is really is what it's called. It's called your peer name. So that is the peer name over there. So peer should be something like user1. So I'm going to leave that in there. So user1, which is your actual SIP user name, okay, gets then used peer in this line over here. Now again, this looks rather horrible, but it's a lot of Linux work, okay? So this shell function over here, do you see shell open bracket? It's taking everything inside here, right? Everything, okay, and executing it, right? I'm going to show you how. So if I go here and I go back to my terminal, I'm actually going to run this command as almost as is. So first of all, peer, where I've got a variable peer, see with the $sign and the curly brackets, I'm going to type, remember it was user2, right? And then I'm going to need to execute this, but Asterisk runs as root, so I need sudo asterisk, right? There you go. It says user2 200. Okay, that is a correct from. So there you can see is what I am executing, that line, and passing the result to shell. So the from now gets populated with the actual from, the correct from formatted from. So let's save that. Once we've done that, we've got to go into Asterisk and dial reload. Okay, I've reloaded my dial plan. Should be able to send each other text messages. I'm going to essentially squinch up my interface because I think it would fit in quite nicely if I have the two next to each other. Yeah, that works quite nicely. You'll see that when you make the screen quite small, you can use it in a slightly different way. Okay, it now then requires you to click and tap and go forward and backward like that. You can see also the video has created a little thumbnail for you. And I need to reload these, refresh registration, good, good. Try again, test. Okay, if I wasn't on the screen, it would make an audible bing. Okay, it's not very loud, but there you go. And say hi back. There is also quite a nice feature in that you can send emojis to each other. All right, so emojis work. And you can dictate a message like this using the dictate message feature. Okay, so there you go. I can dictate a message. The dictate message doesn't really work very nicely on Edge. Sorry, that is a limitation. I'm not sure what. There might be a patch coming out for Edge. I can search for items, I can do a video call, I can do a normal audio call, I can add users, I can delete them, and that's all I can do. Right, there you go. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. You've got the source code that you need via the GitHub website. You can download that and deploy it on your own web server or even just on your local computer. You can follow the steps that you need in this video in order to set up Asterisk to be able to make and receive calls through your browser phone. That's using the WebSockets and the WebRTC technology. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you can play around with the browser phone. Again, drop me messages in the comment section. Let me know how things go and if you're coming up with any problems. I am also going to be updating the GitHub project from time to time and including new features and new abilities, and subscribe to the GitHub project so that you can get the latest updates. Okay, so that's it for now. Tell your friends about the video, subscribe and put the little bell on and all that kind of stuff. There's more videos coming, so stay tuned.